The forest moon of Kalos 9 had never known silence like this. Nyra's pack moved through the bioluminescent undergrowth with practiced stealth, their 6 legs carrying them soundlessly over roots that glowed faint purple in the darkness. The alpha's silver-white fur bristled with tension as she led her hunters through the night, following a trail that had gone cold 3 hours ago. Her cubs were missing. The pack had searched since moonrise, their thermal vision scanning every hollow tree and cave entrance. Nyra's mate had taken the eastern quadrant while she swept west, but neither had found any trace beyond a few scattered prints near the human settlement. That's what worried her most. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous in ways her kind had only begun to understand since they'd arrived on Kalos 9 6 cycles ago. The human colony of New Terra sat at the forest's edge, a collection of prefabricated structures and defensive barriers that hummed with electromagnetic energy. Nyra had watched these creatures from afar, studied their movements, learned their patterns. They were weak individually. No claws, no natural armor, their senses dulled compared to her kind. Yet they'd carved out territory here with tools and weapons that belched fire and thunder, and now her cubs had wandered too close to their domain. The pack emerged from the tree line just as the settlement's perimeter lights began their automated dawn sequence. Nyra raised her muzzle, tasting the air. There, a scent trail, young and familiar, leading directly toward the human structures. Her heart, all 3 chambers of it, clenched with primal fear. She signaled her pack to hold position and moved forward alone, keeping low to the ground. The defensive barriers would detect a large group, but a single hunter might slip through. She'd done it before, observed the humans in their strange rituals of eating together and making incomprehensible sounds at glowing screens. The scent led her past the outer buildings to a small dwelling set slightly apart from the others. Through a transparent panel, what the humans called a window, she could see movement inside. Nyra's predatory instinct screamed at her to retreat, to gather the pack for an assault, but maternal desperation drove her closer. What she saw froze her in place. A human male sat slumped in a chair by the window, his head tilted back in what her kind would recognize as a vulnerable sleeping position. His chest rose and fell with the slow rhythm of deep rest, and there, curled against that chest, were her cubs, both of them peaceful and unharmed, their small forms rising and falling with the human's breathing. Nyra's mind struggled to process the scene. She'd prepared for battle, for negotiation, for anything except this. The human's arms were positioned protectively around her offspring, cradling them with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd assumed about his species. She pressed closer to the window, her claws clicking softly against the structure's exterior. The human didn't stir. Neither did the cubs. They looked content, safe even, nestled against the warmth of this alien creature who should have been their enemy. A soft chime from her left made Nyra spin, dropping into a defensive crouch. Another human approached, an older female with silver streaking her head fur. The woman stopped, raised her empty hands in a gesture Nyra had learned meant no threat, and spoke in low, soothing tones. "Easy there, Mama Wolf. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. Your babies are safe." Nyra didn't understand the words, but the tone carried meaning. The female human gestured toward the dwelling, then mimicked sleep by placing her hands together against her cheek. Slowly, carefully, she approached the entrance and opened it just wide enough for sound to escape. "Darren," the female called softly. "Darren, wake up. We have a visitor." The male human, Darren, stirred slowly, his eyes opening with the gradual awareness of the young. He looked down at the cubs on his chest, then out the window to where Nyra stood frozen between instinct and confusion. To her surprise, he smiled. Not the baring of teeth that meant aggression, but something else, something warm. "Hey there," Darren said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper to avoid startling the cubs. "I found them near the perimeter last night. They were scared, separated from their pack. I couldn't leave them out there alone." Dr. Chen translated with gestures and simplified concepts, pointing to the forest, then to the cubs, then to Darren's chest. The meaning became clear. Her children had been lost, frightened, and this human had protected them through the long night. Darren stood slowly, supporting the cubs with his arms. They stirred but didn't wake, their trust in him absolute. He moved toward the door, each step measured and careful. Dr. Chen opened it fully, stepping aside. Naira's pack materialized from the shadows behind her, drawn by her silence and the unusual scent signature. They formed a semicircle, ready to strike if their alpha commanded it. But Naira held up one paw, signaling patience. Darren emerged into the pre-dawn light, still cradling the cubs. He knelt slowly, bringing them down to Naira's level. "I know you can't understand me," he said, "but they're beautiful. And brave. They found my door and scratched until I opened it. I think they knew I'd help." Naira moved forward, every instinct screaming caution but maternal need overriding fear. She approached until she was close enough to smell her cubs, to verify they were truly unharmed. They stirred at her scent, their eyes opening slowly. When they saw her, they chirped with joy and scrambled from Darren's arms to their mother. But something remarkable happened next. The cubs didn't simply rush to Naira. They turned back to Darren, nuzzling his hands with their muzzles in the gesture her kind used to show gratitude and affection. They'd bonded with him during the night, recognized him as a protector rather than a threat. Darren laughed softly, the sound free of malice or pride. "You're welcome, little ones." Naira studied this human with new eyes. In her world, strength meant claws and speed and the ability to hunt. But perhaps there were different kinds of strength. The strength to show mercy. The strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, even when they belonged to another species entirely. She moved closer to Darren, slowly enough that he could retreat if he chose. Instead, he held still, meeting her gaze with surprising steadiness. Naira pressed her muzzle briefly against his hand, the same gesture her cubs had made. A promise, a treaty written not in words or formal agreements, but in the simple act of kindness shown and recognized. The pack stirred behind her, uncertain but trusting their alpha's judgment. Naira gathered her cubs and turned back toward the forest. But at the tree line she paused and looked back. Darren still knelt there, Dr. Chen's hand on his shoulder, both humans watching her departure. In that moment, Naira understood something profound. The humans were not simply invaders or threats. They were complex beings capable of compassion, of seeing beyond their own needs to help another creature in distress. As dawn broke fully over Kalos 9, Naira led her pack home. The hunt had ended not in violence but in revelation, and somewhere in the human settlement a young man named Darren returned to his dwelling, forever changed by a night spent as an unlikely guardian to creatures from another world. The forest moon had known many nights, but none quite like this one. The night a human became part of the pack, if only for a few precious hours.